The hot chocolate innocently steaming in the ceramic mug seemed to mock me. Its aroma, usually a comforting blend of cocoa and sugar, now reeked of something far more primal. Something unspeakably vile. I watched Leo, his eyes once a vibrant green, now dull and strangely knowing, lift the cup. The tremor in my hand wasn't fear, not entirely, but a cold, calculated disgust. This wasn't a problem to solve, it was a new grotesque variable I hadn't accounted for, a twist in the game that threatened to unravel my carefully woven tapestry of lies. My stomach churned, not from revulsion, but from the realization that this fragile, pale boy, this thing he was becoming, was a direct consequence of a scheme I'd orchestrated, a ripple effect from secrets I'd unearthed to save my own skin. That was the chilling culmination, the final bitter taste of a victory that felt more like a curse. But like all my grand designs, this macabre masterpiece began with a simple, irresistible opportunity. A whisper of a forgotten art collection. A chance to re-establish my dominance after the debacle in the empty gallery. And the quiet, desperate hope of acquiring something truly unique from the reclusive Mr. Davies. The Davies estate, a sprawling Gothic monstrosity cloaked in late October frost, was precisely the kind of decaying grandeur I sought. Not for its intrinsic beauty, mind you, but for the secrets it undoubtedly held ripe for the picking. Old money reclusive owners, a perfect combination for a man like me, a man perpetually teetering on the precipice of financial ruin, yet determined to project an image of effortless success. My cedar and amber cologne, a carefully chosen weapon, preceded me into the musty foyer. A silent announcement of my arrival, a lingering promise of influence. I twisted the tarnished silver ring on my right hand. Peter's ring, a comforting weight. A reminder of the boy I failed and the man I swore I'd become untouchable. I'd told Mr. Davies it was a family heirloom, a lie that reinforced the narrative of my own fabricated lineage. People are so predictable. Give them a story, a touch of mystique, and they'll open their doors and their wallets. Pathetic, really, but undeniably useful. Mr. Davies, a cadaverous man with eyes that seemed to constantly flinch from the light, had greeted me with a hesitant hand. He was an easy mark, clearly overwhelmed by his circumstances. He rambled about his niece, Elara, and her son, Leo, who lived with him. My initial assessment of the collection was disappointing. Mostly forgotten bric-a-brac, a few passable landscapes, nothing that screamed Metropolitan Museum. But then I saw her, Elara. She moved with an unsettling grace, her dark hair a stark contrast to her pale complexion. Her fingers perpetually in motion, folding and refolding a pristine white napkin. A pleasure, Mr. Kane, she'd murmured, her voice like silk over ice, a strange intensity in her eyes. I smiled, a practiced, disarming curve of my lips, and felt the familiar thrill of the chase. This was not about art. This was about power. Later that morning, as I perused a particularly uninspired still life, Mr. Davies reappeared, his face ashen. Another one, Mr. Kane, my prize fowl Albert, mangled beyond recognition. He wrung his hands, third time this month. I feigned sympathy, my mind already racing. Missing livestock, a reclusive family, a woman with an unnerving obsession with tidiness. My pocket notebook, a leather-bound compendium of weaknesses and desires, felt warm in my inner jacket pocket. This was less a collection appraisal and more an investigation into a peculiar, almost theatrical domestic drama. Perhaps a fox, Mr. Davies, I offered, my voice laced with a subtle suggestion of shared understanding. He scoffed. My coupe cost more than your car, Mr. Kane. Houdini himself couldn't break in. I noted his defensive pride, another vulnerability to log. Leo, a frail boy with wide, anxious eyes, had then piped up, "It's the monster dad." I saw it outside my room the night Han Solo disappeared. Elara had shot him a sharp glance, her composure briefly fracturing. "There's no such thing as monsters, sweetie," she'd said, her tone saccharine, but her eyes, those unsettling eyes, had flickered to me. "Mr. Kane, animals live in forests. Some of them eat chickens. Mystery solved." A thinly veiled warning. She was clever, but not clever enough to hide her contempt for my presence. I merely smiled, a silent acknowledgement of her challenge. I'd seen this dance before in the gilded halls of galleries and the hushed chambers of private collectors. They think they're clever, but they're just puppets dangling from my strings. Pathetic, but oh so useful. I spent the next few days extending my stay, citing the need for thorough documentation of the collection. My real purpose was to observe, to peel back the layers of this strange family. Elara's compulsive folding was fascinating. She'd appear at odd hours, silently gathering discarded items, a crumpled newspaper, a forgotten tea towel, and meticulously fold them, her movements almost ritualistic. It reminded me of the frantic tidiness of my mother trying to impose order on the chaos of our tenement, a desperate attempt to erase the shame of our poverty. I couldn't save him then, but I'll never be that helpless again. One afternoon, while feigning interest in an antique desk, I noticed Elara's hand. 2 fingers were already bandaged, and as she reached for a dusty tome, she clamped down on her palm, a fresh bloom of blood seeping between her fingers. "Silly me," she'd said, her voice unnervingly casual. I'd offered assistance, a calculated gesture of concern designed to elicit information. "That looks nasty, we should..." But she'd cut me off, her eyes narrowing. "It's fine, Mr. Kane, I just nicked myself, I'll get a bandage." She repeated the phrase with a chilling insistence, then vanished upstairs. Her evasiveness was a red flag, a beacon for my curiosity. People who hide things always have something worth finding. A few evenings later, I was making my way to the kitchen, my mind preoccupied with how to best leverage Mr. Davies's obvious senility, when a sharp pain shot through my foot. A needle. I bit back a curse, the warm ooze of blood spreading beneath my sock. Elara appeared as if from nowhere, her face a mask of concern that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Oh," she said, then followed me with a dish towel, soaking up the crimson pools with an almost obsessive thoroughness. As I struggled to extract the needle, my foot throbbing, I watched her. Her movements were too precise, too practiced. "How did this end up on the floor?" I demanded, my voice sharper than intended. "It must have dropped out of my sewing kit," she replied, her voice flat. Her composure, even in the face of my bleeding, was unnerving. This woman was hiding something far more substantial than a forgotten needle. My instincts, honed by years of sniffing out weakness, screamed it. I insisted on a trip to the nearest clinic, not because I genuinely needed it, but to disrupt her carefully curated routine, to observe her under duress. She complained incessantly during our 3-hour wait, her voice a low, grating hum. All that time wasted over a mere bandage, she'd muttered on the drive back. Heartless witch, I thought, but kept my smile in place. This woman held a secret, and I would pry it from her. The thought of her hidden life, the peculiar dynamics of this house, stirred something in me, a dark echo of the chaos of my own youth. I couldn't save Peter, but I could certainly control this situation. My attempts to uncover her secret took a new turn. I began leaving small items of clothing, a discarded sock, a crumpled handkerchief, in unlikely places around the house, tucked behind a curtain, under a cushion, on a rarely used windowsill. By morning, they would be meticulously folded and returned to their proper place. It was a petty act, a test of her compulsion, but the thought of her furious, silent tidying filled me with a perverse satisfaction. This woman was a creature of habit, enslaved by her own need for order. And a slave to habit is a slave to a master. My master. Elara grew paler, her movements more agitated. Her fingers seemed permanently bandaged, her arms bruised. She moved like a phantom emerging mostly after dark, her eyes hollow. One day she called me into the kitchen, her voice strained. A spatula was wedged in a drawer. "I can't get it loose," she said, pulling with a desperate strength that belied her frail frame. As I stepped closer, she lost her grip, her elbow slamming into my nose with a sickening crunch. Blood gushed. "Silly me," she said, immediately pressing a dish rag to my face. "Here, tilt your head back." Her feigned concern was almost comical. My free hand shivered the spatula free. "You couldn't have managed this yourself," I rasped, my throat already raw. "Thank you," she replied, her voice devoid of genuine gratitude. She then gestured to a document on the island. "By the way, you need to sign this. It's the new life insurance policy. I've upped our coverage." My eyes narrowed. Why our trip to the clinic got me thinking you never know what might happen. "You said it yourself, you could have bled out." She snatched the cloth from my hand. "I'll chuck it in the wash." A cold, hard knot formed in my stomach. This wasn't about insurance, it was about leverage. She was planning something and I was clearly a part of it. This felt like the collector in Chicago, the one whose secrets I buried in my notebook before he crumbled under the weight of his own lies. The next morning, my scattered clothes remained untouched. The socks lay crumpled, the handkerchief abandoned. My release valve, my small act of defiance, had vanished. Something was profoundly wrong. At breakfast, I caught a glimpse of her wrist partially hidden beneath her sleeve. A nasty, inflamed mark as if she'd been clawed. "What happened to your arm?" I demanded. "Nothing." But I was quicker, pulling back the sleeve before she could wrestle it away. The mark was grotesque red and swollen. Like hell, nothing. "Mr. Kane, enough," she bellowed, her voice cracking. Leo, who had been quietly sipping his hot chocolate, flinched. The mask had slipped. Her desperation was palpable. This was my checkout point. The art collection was a dead end, but the secrets of this house were far more valuable. I needed to know what she was hiding, and I knew the only way to get it was to push. Hard. Later that day, as I read Leo a story, the boy's lower lip began to tremble. "You're not going to disappear, are you, Mr. Kane?" He whispered, his eyes wide with fear. "Why would you think that, Leo?" I asked, feigning paternal concern. "Elara," she said, "you might." My blood ran cold. She was poisoning the well, turning the boy against me, against the very fabric of trust I was trying to weave. This was a direct challenge to my control, an insult to my carefully cultivated image. My need for validation, a constant gnawing hunger, turned to a simmering rage. I stormed toward the second floor, my fury propelling me. Elara's room, her inner sanctum, was where she retreated, a place she kept meticulously organized, especially her clothes. I pounded on the door, the hinges groaning in protest. Leo, hysterical, tugged at my sleeve, begging me to stop. I ignored him. Part of me wanted him there, a witness to my righteous indignation, selfish as that may sound. When the door finally inched open, Elara's face, pale and drawn, appeared in the narrow gap. "I'm busy. We'll discuss this later," she hissed, her voice a low, dangerous whisper. "No." Now I replied, my voice dangerously calm. "What game are you playing, Elara?" "Telling Leo I'll abandon him, taking out new life insurance policies." My rage bubbled, a familiar, intoxicating heat. How long could one man be dismissed, undermined, treated as a mere pawn? I pushed past her, stepping across the threshold into her forbidden domain. The room was a study in controlled chaos, a vanity table with a mirrored front cabinets, hangers holding expensive coats, and a sewing machine. Elara stood motionless, veins pulsing along her forehead. Just then, a metallic groan echoed from beyond a door at the top of a creaky stairwell inside her room. A hush fell over us. Elara's eyes flickered toward the attic door, then back to me, a sudden shift in her demeanor. "You're right. Come downstairs, we'll talk things out." Her voice was suddenly conciliatory, too sweet. She was clearly hiding something up there, What could possibly be so important that she would capitulate so readily? Now she hissed again, a piercing sound that made me hesitate. But my days of being a spineless weasel were long over. I would not be deterred. I started up the stairs. "Leo, get back to bed now," she screamed, her voice shrill. The locked attic door yielded with a single furious shoulder charge, splintering the frame. Behind me, Elara launched into the most unconvincing panic attack I had ever witnessed, insisting she needed a doctor immediately. I ignored her, my eyes scanning the darkened space. A cord dangled beside my head. I pulled it, and a weak bulb blinked on illuminating stacked boxes, clothes racks, and rickety furniture. A meticulously organized mess. The air was stale, sickeningly warm. My hostess stepped in front of me, her panic attack miraculously cured. "Now you know my secret. I spent too much money on shoes and handbags. I've got a secret credit card. It's maxed out. I'm an addict. Let's talk this out in the kitchen." Her performance was pathetic. My gaze drifted to the far side of the room beyond the stacked boxes. Metal jingled. Elara, desperate, stabbed her tongue into my mouth, a repellent, unexpected move. "Come to bed," she whispered, her hands clawing at my jacket. I gripped her shoulders and used them to steer her aside. Through a narrow gap, a pair of eyes hovered, regarding us from the shadow of the corner. I shoved away a tower of boxes and froze. Before me lay a figure, thin and pale, barely visible in the gloom. A metal collar attached it to the wall by a heavy chain. What the hell? Had Elara been keeping a prisoner for a fleeting moment, I felt a twisted sense of relief that my own romantic overtures had been rebuffed. I stepped forward, ready to channel months of pent-up frustration into a decisive confrontation. But Elara threw herself in my way, lacing her hand with mine. I didn't want any of this. "Nick, he manipulated me. I had no choice." Nick. So this bastard had a name. "Elara," I said, still in a state of complete shock. "This is..." As I took a second, harder look at the intruder, my voice died. Those eyes glowed, two circles of green light in the outline of a skull marked by liver spots. Beneath, pale skin, vertebrae, cartilage, and muscle fiber shone through, connected by a network of blue and black veins. I didn't think anything so frail could possibly live, yet the concave chest went up and down in little heaves, the chain rattling away. At first I could manage alone. Elara continued, her voice gaining a manic edge. "I just let him have a little taste of my own every now and again. Or I'd fish tissues and clothes out of the bin whenever you got cut. He'd wander around the house at night and nobody got hurt. But lately," sustaining both him, she hesitated, as though realizing what she was on the verge of saying, "I just haven't been able to keep him satisfied. I hoped the chickens might do, but he said there was no substitute for human, and the less I could feed him, the more dangerous he became. Then he said I had to let him eat you. He said we had to get rid of you, but I refused because I love you. That's when he took a bite at me." She held up her wrist, the scars still prominent. "So I locked him away up here to keep you safe, to keep us safe." A soft hand caressed my cheek while she reaffirmed her love, her right arm hidden behind her back. "Come downstairs. I'll explain everything." Her pathetic act didn't fool me, not for a second. I had seen too many performances orchestrated, too many deceptions myself. When she made her move, I was ready. My hand shot out, catching Elara's wrist in midair. The knitting needle, sharp and glinting, halted mere inches above my left temple. Her eyes went wide with fear. We stood there, my fingers sinking deeper into her flesh. She released the weapon, which clattered onto the floor. When she tried to wriggle free, I let go. Her momentum carried her across the room, toppling over a box of garments along the way. Her skull collided with the angled wall hard. A red ink blot smeared across the slanted wood boards as she slid onto the floor directly beside her secret lover, whose nose twitched like a rabbit sniffing out a juicy carrot. He leaned over her as far as the chain would allow. "Nick!" she rasped as he hunched over her body, drawing long, satisfied inhales. Frail hands capped by long, curved nails ran all over her damaged skull, and then the creature licked blood off its fingertips, groaning with delight. Every subtle movement carried an elegant, almost regal manner. His mouth opened, revealing long, curved fangs longer than cayenne pepper's fangs, capable of stripping flesh off a live chicken. Groggy and confused, Elara's eyeballs rotated up towards him. "Darling," she muttered, a single digit pressed against her lips. Her companion smiled, then those fangs plunged deep into her neck. Elara shrieked, her body quickly draining of any sort of nutritious element. She deflated like a balloon after someone released the stem, her squeals becoming raspy croaks, quickly melting away. This macabre display startled a shocked gasp from me. My feet remained rooted to the spot, a bizarre mix of horror and cold calculation warring within my mind. This was a creature of myth, and it was here, in this house, a secret that could shatter the very foundations of the art world, or perhaps elevate me beyond my wildest dreams. Meanwhile, Nick's muscles flexed and writhed, his belly swelling. Blonde hair sprouted from the taut skull, his spinal column becoming less defined, the wrinkles less pronounced. Now he appeared almost alive, better ripened. As the withered husk, vaguely resembling Elara, slumped onto the floor, a voice behind me screamed, "Vampire!" The sound Leo's terrified cry broke my paralysis. I spun toward the boy, his cheeks wet with tears. "Oh, Peter." This reminded me of my own helplessness, the way I couldn't save him from the fever. I couldn't save him, but I'll never be that helpless again. Even though this awful series of events made zero sense, I knew we needed to run fast. I maneuvered Leo toward the stairs with a series of stiff, desperate shoves. From across the space there came a metallic groan, and I glanced back just as the prisoner snapped the chain, binding him to the wall with his bare hands. Although free, he didn't come after us immediately because colored garments lay spilled across the floor, collateral damage from Elara's earlier tumble. My wife's lover scooped these up, began folding, and set them on an antique side table nearby. Holy shit, the cereal folder wasn't Elara, it was Nick. Those dazzling eyes scanned me from head to toe, a long forked tongue whipping across a thin set of lips. He appeared completely calm, like the idea of us escaping was simply unthinkable. The steps flew beneath Leo and my feet. We charged past the makeup room, downstairs, along the hall, into the garage, only to discover a shadowy figure hanging from the rafters like a bat. How on earth did he move so fast? We frantically scrambled for the sliding glass doors at the back of the house, but outside, beyond the vegetable patch, the shadowy figure sat perched on a fence post, those glowing eyes silhouetted against the darkened forest. As a wintry breeze carried a cruel, quiet laugh across the garden, it occurred to me this cat-and-mouse game most likely delighted our pursuer. There was nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. That left only one option. The wheelbarrow lay perfectly still 15 meters ahead of us. I ordered Leo to make a break for the woodshed, but Mr. Kane, he protested. "Move." My heart pistoning in my chest, I trampled over strawberries and grabbed the head shears, holding them out defensively. A single leap made Nick sail straight over the vegetable patch. Before I even knew it, an icy claw clamped tight around my throat, the force driving me down amongst the broccoli, breathless. My hands unintentionally released the shears. Above me, a glistening tongue slid out to wet the grinning mouth. I glimpsed pink-stained teeth-hooked fangs. This was the end. Any second now, that bastard would drain my body and bury the remains in the soil like the chickens. A sharp nail cut across my throat, and then Nick sucked the blood off his finger with delight, eyes rolled back in his skull. "Oh, I'm going to make you pay for what you made me do to Elara," he said. I was so hungry I simply couldn't resist. He tapped his metal collar. "I want you to know, Mr. Kane, these chains were meant for you. Elara and I planned on keeping you locked up as an inexhaustible supply of blood. But lately, the ravenous hunger, it simply became too much, what with Elara rationing the food supply. So I agreed to be locked up while she got all the ducks in a row, and now look what unfolded. Well, at least my sweet Elara bear will know the man who forced me to feast on her flesh died screaming in. Out of nowhere, a child-sized object vaulted onto Nick's back and stuffed some kind of vegetable inside his mouth. This sent my opponent into furious convulsions. Only when I forced myself to sit up did it become clear Leo was paintbrushing Nick's face with a portion of garlic he'd dug out of the vegetable patch. The pair whirled around a bulb half-lodged inside the vampire's frothing mouth. He whipped his top half forward simultaneously, sending Leo airborne and dropping onto his knees, and hacked up a tidal wave of blood, both hands clutched around his own throat for relief. Fury washed over me. Having a creature like this in the world was one thing, but nobody hurts a potential asset, nobody threatens my control. In one smooth motion, I jumped up and grabbed the shears and then charged forward with every ounce of strength I could muster, arms outstretched. Nick was too distracted to prevent the sharpened steel from piercing his chest right where the heart would be. When I released the handles, they stuck out all by themselves. A death rasp went up. Expanding from the entry point, the bloodsucker's body evaporated like dust, peeling away in every direction across the torso, the breeze carrying the scattered remains away. Within seconds, only the shears and metal collar remained, both of which dropped into the soil. It was over. A battered Leo staggered to his feet, his breath slow and choked, pained even. I scooped him into my arms, then the two of us collapsed amidst the turnips, not sobbing, but I felt a strange release, a peculiar sense of triumph. For some time I believed we'd escaped the nightmare, mostly unscathed. The beast died, I'd uncovered a dark secret, and after a months-long investigation, the police conceded they had no idea where Elara Davies disappeared to. Sounds like a happy ending, right? Wrong. Over the coming weeks, Leo's appetite dwindled to the point he couldn't even keep hot chocolate down. The poor kid had so little energy, entire days passed without him so much as climbing out of bed. A series of dietary specialists were completely mystified. Then one morning, while he sat behind the breakfast table, I studied his blonde hair, those green eyes, and had a sudden, chilling realization. At the counter, I poured out a hot chocolate. Subtly, I pricked my finger with a needle, shook a few drops of blood into the cup, and stirred vigorously. This was a test, a horrifying experiment, but one I needed to conduct. Here went nothing. Leo took an apprehensive sip, slapped his lips together, and beamed. "This tastes great, just like the ones Elara used to make." And then I watched a cold, calculating horror gripping me as my new project. My new asset drained the liquid in a single gulp. Another puppet on my strings, but this one would require a more specialized diet. This was far more complicated than the empty gallery, a far more delicate balancing act than the auction of secrets. But the rewards, the potential for ultimate control, were immeasurable.